Welcome into the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Josh Newberg, and we are live from Nashville, Tennessee. Today's Wednesday, January 22nd. Thank you all for joining us, and congrats to all the Ohio State Buckeye fans for winning the national championship, beating Notre Dame 34-23, becoming the first 12-team playoff winner. They're also the first 4-team playoff winners. Ohio State, they are rolling, and when we mean rolling, we're talking recruiting. Ohio State currently has the number 4 ranked class in 2025. Only about 2 more weeks until that becomes final, and we've officially turned the page to 2026. But boy, do they have some stars coming on campus. Tavian St. Clair, Devin Sanchez, Quincy Porter, Riley Pettijohn, an elite class with instant impact playmakers. So, turning the page of 2026, already loaded. Number 1 wide receiver, Chris Henry Jr. is committed. 6'5", 195. Imagine him paired up with Jeremiah Smith. Top 10 class already for the Buckeyes in 26. And number 1 QB, Jared Curtis, just named Ohio State in his top 6. So before we move on, just want to say a big congratulations to Ohio State. Today's show, it's loaded. Today, we got UF and Georgia experts right here in the studio with me. We'll also go out west and talk Oregon Ducks and Auburn, instant impact recruits from the 2025 class. Big show today. Let's get to it. Let's talk a little Georgia recruiting. I'm lucky enough to have Rusty Mansell of Dogs HQ right here in the studio. I know he's not at the desk today. Our mics are down in Atlanta at the national championship game, but he is sitting just 15 feet away, and it's great to have him in studio coming off of a big weekend in Athens. There's a junior day. We're going to cover it all, but first, Georgia fans, do me a favor, slap that subscribe button for me. We're covering UGA recruiting all year long, so jump on board, hit subscribe. All right, we got Rusty. He's here. Show him. There he is. Rusty, big junior day in Athens over the weekend. Tyler Atkinson, Grayson linebacker, number 1 at the position. He was in town. What did we learn about Tyler Atkinson in this recruitment?
Well, I'll tell you this. Tyler Atkinson Georgia has been recruiting him literally, Josh, since about the end of his 7th grade season. This kid's been on the map, the recruiting map since middle school. Georgia offered early. I'll say this. I'm not predicting Georgia, but what I can tell you is facts. I don't know if I've ever covered a kid that's been on campus more in the first 5 years in a recruitment than Tyler Atkinson has been in Athens. I don't know what else he needs to see, but every single time he comes onto campus and that coaching staff, Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, those guys spend time with him, it becomes more valuable because it's getting close to decision time now that his class of 2026 is in focus. He's the number 1 player in the state of Georgia already in this class.
He is officially on the clock. Tyler Atkinson, does this give you Justice Terry vibes? And here's what I'm saying.
Ooh, be careful now.
Everybody, this entire recruitment said Justice Terry is a Georgia lean through and through until he wasn't anymore. Yeah. And it seems like now maybe, Justice Terry, though, he took a lot of visits as well. So do you feel that comparison with Tyler Atkinson?
I think it's a little early for any type of comparison with that. I will say this is a very high-profile player. He is going to take a lot of visits. I do not anticipate an early decision from him. He's going to take his June visits and probably sit down with his family and kind of digest this thing and decide if he's going to make a decision before the season or if he'll carry this thing into December. I know this. He's going to take a lot of visits. But, with Georgia, there is a familiarity there. Glenn Schumann has been locked in on him. I just don't know how many more visits he's going to take, but this is a guy that's highly coveted for a reason. He's one of the most complete linebackers I've covered in Georgia. And, Josh, I'll tell you this, the way he's wired, this kid absolutely loves football.
Yeah, we got him and his father up in Nashville a couple weeks ago, and he is a football guy through and through. There's no doubt about it. All right. Let's talk about another prospect that we talk a lot about here on the Inside Scoop, and that's running back Javian Osborne.
Yeah.
He's out of the state of Texas. We have been talking about him a lot in terms of the Longhorns and the Michigan Wolverines, but this weekend when he was in Athens, he had a lot to say, and it seems like Georgia is now a real contender here.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to get somebody out of Texas like this, a highly recruited running back prospect like this, you've got to get him on campus and you got to give him in front and you got to spend some time with them. So, listen, it still may be Texas and Michigan quietly out in front for him, but these types of visits don't hurt, and you're able to sit down and have that real quality time with he and his family and show them the depth chart, show them different things. But you don't get a player out of Texas like that unless you get them on visits multiple times. Right. Good job by Georgia getting in there early in January.
Yeah, right. that's the formula. You got to get him there for that junior day visit in January. Then you get him back for a spring visit. Maybe he comes back for the spring game. Then you get him on that official visit. And all of a sudden we're talking about Javian Osborne being on Athens 4 or 5 times in a 4 or 5 month span. So we'll see what happens. But Rusty, he's not the only big name on the board. Running back Savion Hyder, Derek Cooper, Carson Baker. These are all top names on Georgia's board. So one, how many running backs can Georgia take in this cycle? And two, where do they stand with some of these other big names?
I'm very confident Georgia will take at least 2. It would not surprise me if they felt like they can get the right fit to take 3, because they only took 1 in the class of 2025 and running back Bo Walker. The depth chart in Georgia there is going to be open, I think, for this 2026 class. And you look at these guys, you look at Hyder out of Virginia, you look at Cooper out of Florida, look at Carson Baker. The state of Georgia's got some great prospects at that position too. Carson Baker, I think, is a guy after the state championship game and after the performance he used for Langston Hughes, kind of shot up some charts for everybody, including me. I didn't know he can roll like that, a 195-pound running back. So I think Georgia is going to cast a wide net like they always do at running back, but I'm confident, Josh, they're going to land at least 2 of these major targets, and I think I'm comfortable in saying Georgia's going to sign at least 2 in the class of 2026.
You can't go wrong with any of those names if they can land them. All right, let's wrap this up for Georgia fans. Give me 2 names that Dog fans need to know as we're early in this month of January, but who do they need to know about?
It's kind of hard. The class of 2026 is starting to come into focus. The portal's pretty much over. Now people are starting to focus on the next crop, the 2026 guys. I'll give you 2 guys in state. Ryan Mosley, 6'2", 205-pound athlete out of Carrollton High School. Josh, he's one of these rare guys to me that can play offense or he can play defense. If Kirby Smart says, hey, it's your choice, they would take him at safety. They would take him at wide receiver, almost like they did with KJ Bolden. If KJ Bolden said, I want to play wide receiver at Georgia, Kirby Smart takes him 100%. So I think Ryan Mosley's a guy right now. I'm leaning toward wide receiver from Carrollton, but I do think Georgia would take him at any side of the ball. And the next guy is a guy that I recently learned about, and credit to Charles Power, our own 3 national guy. He ranked him very high. Ernest Rankings out of Southwest DeKalb High School, 6'6", 280-pound junior defensive tackle. I knew a little bit about him, but I really didn't get a chance to dig into his tape until recently. Already a top 10 player in the state for On 3. This is a guy that was in Athens this weekend, and you always talk about the big boys. You always talk about kind of when Georgia's rolling, they're rolling on defensive line, and you really want to land these in-state prospects. Josh, I'll give you a little insight here. One of the assistant coaches at his high school is, oh, by the way, of Quincy Carter, former Georgia Bulldog, big-time Georgia fan. He's a Southwest DeKalb legend. He's there. It's not going to hurt him at all, but this is one of those guys, I think, as recruiting starts to come into more focus, everybody in the state of Georgia is going to know who this young man is. In a 6'6" frame, he's not going to be hard to hide too much longer.
You can tell Georgia recruiting is buzzing coming out of that big junior day. Always great to have Rusty Mansell here in studio in Nashville. You guys talked to Rusty and I. How you feeling about this 26 cycle, and what do you think about Tyler Atkinson? Should I be comparing him to Justice Terry, or is that completely off base? Talk to us. Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk a little Florida Gator recruiting coming out of a big recruiting weekend. It was a junior day down in Gainesville, and there were some big-time names on campus. I got Corey Bender here in studio with me. No, he's not at the desk, but trust me, he's about 15 feet away. I could throw my pen and hit him if I wanted to. But before we get going, UF fans, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button to the On3 Recruits channel. All right, let's bring in Corey Bender. There he is, and we're going to talk about one of the 5 stars that was on campus all the way from Baltimore, Maryland, Manny Iannacho. He is the number 2 offensive tackle, number 2 ranked player overall, and he was in Gainesville this weekend. What's your feel for his recruitment coming out of this one?
Yeah, Josh, he was straight to the point. He told us right now Florida's probably number 6 on his list, and if you probably a few months ago, Florida wasn't even in his top 10. That all changed. Jonathan DeCoster, one of Florida's offensive line coaches, visited him at school the week prior, convinced him to visit over Georgia. Those are the 2 schools that are trying to get him on campus last weekend. Florida won out, and obviously Florida still has a little bit of room to make up there, but they're on the rise. It's one of those. I think Oregon right now is the clear-cut leader. You have Georgia at number 2 behind them. But the kid was straight. He was really honest with us. He said, Florida's on the rise, but they have a little bit of ground to make up, and he wants to come back in the spring, see the coaching style, see how Rob Sale, John DeCoster, how they coach, and then from there he might send an OV. So I think that next visit, it's kind of a wait and see. He called this past visit crucial, and he said it went very well. So obviously that was a good sign for Florida. They just have to kind of show him more stuff on the field when he comes back in the spring. And if that goes well, he's going to schedule an OV. But as of right now, you got to like Oregon and Georgia the most.
That's the formula right there. Get him on that junior day visit, that spring game, and then get him in for the official visit, and you got a shot. Speaking of getting a shot, let's switch over to the defensive line. Kendall Gervil, he's from Fort Myers. He seems like pretty big priority. Where do the Gators stand with him right now?
Yeah, Florida's leading in the RPM. They've hosted him more than any other school. They offered him as a freshman, so Florida's been in the mix for quite a while. And he said when he came back over the weekend that his best relationship in recruiting right now is with Gerald Chapman, the defensive line coach at Florida. So I think that's big time for Florida's staff. USC, Miami, Michigan, those are some other schools in the mix. But I think as of right now, you got to like Florida's chances. Even during the first week of the contact period, they always say track the visits, and that's the case when the coaches get on the road too. Billy Napier saw him one of the first few days once the contact period opened up. He feels like a major priority for Florida. And I think obviously as the process goes along, he's not in a huge hurry to make a decision, so Florida's going to keep being persistent. But as of right now, as we enter February, I think Florida's a school to look out for the most.
All right. Now, the Gators, they're doing a great job of putting a lot of talent around DJ Lagway, and you can kind of feel recruiting heating up at some of these skill spots. And one of the guys that they're really locked in on is Caden Prothro out of Georgia. He's a tight end. He was on campus this weekend. Where did the Gators stand with Prothro?
Yeah, I think right now, as you look at his recruitment, Georgia's looked at as the number one school for him. But Florida, I would say, is probably in the top 3, top 4 range. He last visited Florida for the Kentucky game, had a great experience for that atmosphere. Florida won that game, but he wanted more time around the coaches. That was accomplished this past weekend. Russ Calloway, Billy Napier and company, they rolled out the red carpet for him. I'm not saying he is like Kyle Pitts, but that's the type of athlete he is at the position. They look at him as more of a hybrid. So Florida is really saying, hey, we need a guy who can stretch the field. We have a deep tight end room, but we need that guy who can stretch the field and score points for us. That's what Prothro is. And obviously, Under Armour All-American Week, Josh, as other years we've covered it, now they have the juniors in the game now, and he's one of the best. He's one of the best performers regardless of class. So that shows what type of athlete and prospect he is, and it's really no surprise that Florida's rolling out the red carpet for a kid of his caliber. So I think right now he said Florida's going to get an OV. Georgia, Auburn, and Alabama, those are kind of the main 4 that he's looking at. But I think right now everyone's trailing Georgia, but Florida's definitely in that top 3 range.
All right. One prospect that was not on campus that we need to talk about is cornerback Jalen Waters. Now, his recruitment is truly all over the place. He's a former FSU commitment that's now committed to UF, but looking at Miami, Corey, is he going to hit the trifecta, or can the Gators hold on to him?
It's definitely possible because it's funny. When he flipped to Florida, when he previously committed to Florida State, he was still taking visits, but as Florida closed out the season, that commitment became more and more solid, and he said, hey, I'm locked in. I'm not going to take any other visits. Here we go. Obviously, he just visited Miami. He's going to probably take several OVs as well. Miami's Florida's top competition, but I think as of right now, I mean, people always say, is he 100% committed? I would probably say in the 80% range. He's going to keep taking visits. Miami's the biggest threat. I think he needs to get back in Gainesville for Florida's sake for more of a refresher, because at the end of the year, he attended the Ole Miss game, the LSU game. He loved those atmospheres. Florida won both those games, and he said, hey, I'm locked in with Florida, no recruiting drama, none of that. But obviously, I always tell our fans on our message board, well, then now here's the recruiting offseason. You take a lot of these junior day visits. He's going to be one of those guys you're going to have to track all the way through the finish line. But I think right now, he's obviously in Florida's class, but it's going to be a guy they have to continue to recruit all throughout the cycle.
Yeah, some of these guys make sure that recruiting stays interesting, and I have a feeling Jalen Waters is one of them. All right, before I let you go, give me 2 more intriguing names from over the weekend that you think UF fans should start getting to know.
Yeah, I think Clifton Hester from Cocoa is an on-3 top 100 prospect. Billy Napier actually just visited him today at his school. The other week, Will Harris, the secondary coach, visited him as well. He's a guy, he told me before the visit, before he got on campus this past weekend, that Florida was his leader. Syracuse has kind of been viewed as a top competition. Fran Brown, that relationship with his staff is very strong. I think that's one of the guys that I think overall Florida will probably get in the fold sooner than later, especially now showing. I think the biggest thing with him was how big of a priority is he for Florida. And obviously Napier going to go visit him today at the school, that really kind of shows that interest on Florida's end is very high. And I would think another one too, Josh, is Darion Williams out of Tampa Plant. A Florida State commit. He's more of an athlete, can play either side of the ball, but Florida likes him at receiver. And recruiting fans love this. He's committed to Florida State, but still says he has a top 3. You know how that goes. And that's Florida State, Florida, and Miami. Florida is viewed as a number 2 school. He was supposed to be there this past weekend, but couldn't make the trip. But I know right now mutual interest is high. They visited him during the first week of the contact period. So, you know, Waltez Clark's his former teammate who signed with Florida, one of the top running backs last cycle. He's in his ear. So I think as the cycle moves on, he's going to be one guy that Florida fans will need to track more and more.
All right, Gator fans, talk to us in the comment section below. What is the vibe right now around Florida recruiting? It seems so different from last year. Heading into last year's offseason kind of seemed flat, but this year it really seems like the Gators are going to clean up on the trail. So talk to us. Who do you think is the most important recruit in this cycle for the Gators? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk some Oregon recruiting. I know it's freezing cold out west, but the Ducks are heating up on the recruiting trail. Number 5 class in 2025. Number 1 recruiting class in 2026, and the Ducks got a lot of important targets still left on that board, so we're going to break it down in this video. I got Justin Hopkins of Scoop Duck, and he's going to take us behind the scenes on some of these big recruiting moves going down at Oregon. But first, Duck fans, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button. We are the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, and we want Oregon fans to jump on board, so hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in the great Justin Hopkins of Scoop Duck. So we are going to start with the number 1 class in 2026, and the Ducks aren't finished. They're going after the number 1 quarterback, Jared Curtis, out of Nashville. And there's been a bit of news. He dropped a top 6. Oregon makes the cut. He also dropped his first 3 officials, and Oregon's in that group. So, Justin, where do you think Oregon sits among this top 6 as we head into these important offseason months?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, Jared has come out and said that Oregon is the team to beat at one point coming off of that decommitment to Georgia, but he's kind of backed away a little bit from that and keeping things open. You know, I think the Ducks are probably at least in the top 2. It seems like they're a team that he talks about very frequently and mentions relationships specifically with Coach Stein and Coach Lanning. So I think the Ducks are in great shape as he kind of enters this visit stretch. But there's one thing that gives me some pause, if you will, and it's a fact that you can look at that list and only one of those schools is an outlier, and it's Oregon, because otherwise everybody else is east of Texas. So that's one thing as this progresses and as we see it get into, you know, the waning hours and decision time in June or July or whatever, it'll be interesting to see if he does indeed, you know, that far from home.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think he's a couple months from a decision. I don't think he's going to make a decision in June. I think he might make a decision in July, but I think more likely we're looking at August, September at the earliest for Jared Curtis. So right now, though, I'm sure fans watching this channel saw me and Steve talk yesterday. Steve thinks Georgia is the leader right now. I kind of give the edge to Oregon. We're just talking way too early projections for Curtis. So that being said, who else would you consider? What other quarterbacks right now are at the top of Oregon's board? Inside Scoop listeners, let's talk Prize Picks. And here's what I want to do. I want to give you $50. How's that going to happen? Well, if you play $5 in lineups, after that play, whether you win or lose, you're going to have $50 in your account. All you have to do is play $5 in lineups. All right. So this week with the NFL playoffs coming, I am thinking about Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes on the more than passing yards, but also like Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley. What are you guys playing this weekend with the NFL playoffs coming? Now, Prize Picks. We love Prize Picks because of the easy withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. That is what makes Prize Picks the number 1 daily fantasy sports app. So here's what we're going to do to get that 50. Go to prizepicks.com/inside scoop. Promo code inside scoop to receive a guaranteed 50 once you play $5 in lineups. That's Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Well, Oregon's in an interesting spot in this cycle. Obviously, Jaron Kiava-Sagapolutele made the late decision to go to Oregon, but then to go to Cal. So I think that opened things up in 26. Obviously, they've got Jonas Williams already committed. So they'd already have a 4-star quarterback in this class. But, you know, we just talked about Jared and Oregon's top 2 or at worst top 3 there. But probably among the top 2 for Ryder Lyons out west. And so that's another quarterback that the Ducks are heavily pursuing. Dan Lanning and Will Stein also just visited him at Folsom. this week during the coaches making the rounds. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I could conceivably see a world, hear me out, that Oregon ends up with 3 quarterbacks in this class. Now, obviously, that's going to be really difficult to do. But the reason that could happen is because Ryder Lyons is going to take his mission out of high school. So even though he would be in the 26 class, he really wouldn't be a 26 quarterback, as whether he takes a 1 year, 1.5 year, or 2 year mission, that would put some spacing there. So if the Ducks ended up with 3 quarterbacks, that's how they do it. I know that's going to be really tough, but I'm never going to count Dan Lanning out from pulling off a stunner.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense with Ryder Lyons, like you said. His recruitment's a little unorthodox here. So we will keep an eye on the quarterback board as things heat up. Speaking of heating up, number 1 wide receiver Chris Henry Jr., he's committed to Ohio State, but we saw a report from Wiltfong over the weekend that he's still in contact with Oregon. So, Justin, what's the strategy here? What should Duck fans expect? Is this a long-term play? Are the Ducks on the outside looking in? What do you think about Chris Henry Jr.?
Well, I think Ohio State just won a national championship, so you want to let that get a little bit removed from that recruitment. So, kudos to them. And Ohio State's obviously done everything right there. They've got Brian Hartline, who we know recruits absolute animals at the wideout position, whether it's Jeremiah Smith or guys before him. So, for Oregon, this is the long game, right? It's one of those things where he's now more so in your footprint than he is in Ohio State's, because he's at Mater Dei in California. Just get him on campus. Get him on campus as frequently as you can. Continue to build those relationships. Continue to just really kind of establish yourself. And it feels like this is, Oregon's really the only threat right now. I could see Chris Henry maybe taking a few other visits, but he's really kind of only openly talking about Oregon and Ohio State. Right. So, yeah, if I'm Dan Lanning, I just keep trying to get him on campus and kind of keep chopping wood, if you will, little by little, and see if you can maybe make a play later this fall or even after that.
It sounds like a big football game. It's like, hey, we just want to be there in the 4th quarter where he's still talking to us and we have a chance to score at the end and win. But, I get it. Chris Henry Jr., he's going to be a tough pull. And like you said, you got to wait till some of the emotion of this national championship wears off and all that. But probably a long-term play. Speaking of Chris Henry, he's at Mater Dei High School in California, and we know Oregon really likes to raid California for the best player. So, speaking of 2026, who's some of the most important Cali targets for Oregon?
Yeah, as we know, Oregon loves to go set up shop in California, although I will give Lincoln Riley credit. He's getting a little pushback and making an effort this cycle, so hopefully he's kind of figured that thing out. But, Oregon recruits nationally, but no state's more important than California for the Ducks. Yeah. There's a really good group of recruits this year in California. Just a few off the top of my head. Tommy Toffee, just talking about Mater Dei, is there, and an offensive lineman, which we know Oregon's going to prioritize. 4-star linebacker Talanoa Ely, one of the top linebackers in the country. Oregon is expected to get him on campus this weekend for their big junior day. Brandon Arrington is a 5-star athlete down in California that the Ducks, along with every other program in the country, are after. Davin Benjamin, RJ Sermons, Brandon Lockhart. Those are 3 defensive backs in the state of California the Ducks are after. Lockhart and Sermons both committed to USC currently. And then last, I'll throw out tight end Israel Briggs. I know that's another position Oregon needs. He's expected to visit as well for this junior day for Oregon. So the Ducks are certainly got a nice list going of targets in California, and already got a couple of California commits headlined by Cody Green once again at Mater Dei. We keep talking about Mater Dei. They just have so many dang good players.
Doesn't go away. So, Duck fans, talk to Justin and I. How you guys feeling about number 1 quarterback Jared Curtis? And what do you think Oregon needs to do to lock down that number 1 class in 2026? Talk to us. Comment section below. Let's talk some Auburn recruiting. The Tigers have about 2 more weeks until the 2025 cycle is officially over. And right now they have the number 6 ranked class in the country. And it's been a wild ride. Of course, Deuce Knight, the big flip, that was the news of the cycle. But in this video today, I got Cody Belair on 3 national scout, and we're going to talk about who's going to come in and make an instant impact from the 2025 class. So before we get going, Auburn fans, do me a favor real quick and hit the subscribe button to the On 3 Recruits channel. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, and we want you to be subscribed, so jump on board. All right, let's bring in Cody Belair, and we're here to talk Auburn instant impact recruits. I want to get your opinion on who you see on both sides of the ball coming in and making an impact as a true freshman.
Yeah, Josh, I think this one is one of the more sneaky picks I have here because Auburn has actually done a good job in the portal along the offensive line, picking up Xavier Chaplin from Virginia Tech and Mason Murphy from USC. But I think on 300, four-star offensive tackle Broderick Shull has a chance to get some run up front for Auburn in 2025. The big thing for me with Broderick Shull is he's simply a freak athlete. And he's 6'6", 300 pounds with 34-inch arms, but he's recorded a laser 4.5 shuttle and a 30-inch vertical, which are both bonkers for an offensive lineman, let alone someone with his frame. The thing he has to focus on, though, more than anything is generating more power at the point of attack. And fortunately for Auburn, he is an early enrollee, so he will have a full spring and a full summer to physically develop and work with a college strength and conditioning program. So I just have a really hard time seeing Broderick Shull not playing somewhere in this front five with his physical and athletic traits. But when you look at the defensive side of the ball, Elijah Melendez, he has no concerns when it comes to being physically ready to go for the Auburn Tigers because he is a rocked up 6'1 plus, 220, 225 pounds. And I mean, he looks like he's about to get ready to declare for the draft, let alone get into a freshman gen ed class. But seriously, this is a player that has the chance to walk in and play meaningful snaps due to his physical style of play and violence between the tackles. He has a chance to be a big factor on early downs, being an enforcer between the hashes. And it doesn't hurt his chances either to see the field early with linebackers Eugene Asante, Dorian Mousey, and Austin Keys all moving on to the next level. I think he's got a real shot to be a significant role player on this defense next season.
All right, number 6 class in the country, as I said. And, it's not all about coming in and playing as a freshman, although we do see Auburn utilizing their true freshmen quite a bit. So, Cody, if you had one player from this 2025 cycle that you're like, oh, he might not play as a freshman, but he's going to have a great career out on the plains, who would it be?
Yeah, I think the easy choice here is someone like Deuce Knight, who I think, we think very highly of, and he's going to have a higher ceiling, and he's a long-term development sort of guy. But this one's a fun one to me, Josh, because it sort of relies upon what Auburn ends up turning his body into at the next level, because 4-star linebacker Jacaleb Falk's skill set and build have such tremendous range. This is someone that's 6'3 plus 230 pounds right now walking on campus, and his frame could genuinely add 25 to 30 pounds on it in less than a year if they really wanted to, in order to get the most out of him and his ability as an edge defender. This is someone who has spent a lot of time in his career as an edge defender, and he can generate pressure off the edge as good as anyone in this Auburn signing class. But he also has the instincts and closing speed in order to play as an off-ball backer as well. So I think this is someone who will eventually grow and mold into this hybrid backer, pass rusher chess piece that Auburn will use to frustrate the hell out of opposing offenses once they can solidify what that role looks like for him in the coming years.
Auburn fans, talk to us. This is a really good class. Who is your favorite recruit of the bunch? And also, do you agree with Cody? Are these the guys that are going to come in and make an instant impact? Or do you think it's somebody else? Let us know. Comment section below.